New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And hello again, dear ones. Rev BRZ with you over here.
Rev Z right here.
And this is New Thought today on the New Thought Media Network. It happens every Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock. I want to welcome you aboard and welcome you to the program. We have a great dear friend and longtime collaborator as our guest today. We're welcoming Reverend Chris Plym to the program. Reverend Chris, welcome aboard.
Welcome, BRZ, and welcome, Z. I know that BRZ is going to get my name sooner or later. It's just the way it works.
It's only been 10, 12 years or so.
I know, at least, you know, yeah. I've known both of these gentlemen for a good long time.
Yes.
And it's taken us a good long time to get you on the program. However, I know we're both really grateful you're able to be here today and excited that you're here today. We're going to talk more about your ministry and what it is that you're doing in the world, but also how that influences and impacts and supports this vision of a world that works for all. We'll also today, folks, be talking a bit about Reverend Chris's vision for the future of New Thought, all of that in our later segment. But let's get started. Reverend Chris, tell us a little bit more about yourself. What do our viewers need to know to get to know you and to get started with this conversation?
All right. Well, I am currently a special focus minister at Mile High Church. Along with that, I do a lot of volunteer work. So I'm going to, first of all, talk about some of the things I do for Mile High Church. I am a sponsoring minister for 2 teaching chapters in the Ukraine. One is in Bilaturska. The other one is Temenos, which is in Cherkasy. They are both about 50 kilometers from Kiev in different directions. One's north, one's kind of west. But things that happen in Kiev affect our practitioners that are there. We have about 28 to 30 practitioners in that area of the world. Wow. And now that I've been working with them, I'm finding more and more people who were practitioners in Russia who are coming out of the woodwork now and trying to get connected because they're realizing that I meet monthly with my Ukraine teaching chapters. And now I have practitioners, or people that used to be practitioners, maybe their license expired or whatever, because they had no connection with Centers for Spiritual Living. So I got one contact over the weekend. I got another contact today from people I've never heard from before. I find it's very challenging. It's great. I do have my primary translator of materials is another practitioner who holds her license with Temenos in Cherkasy, Ukraine, and yet she lives in Crimea. So it's interesting to work with her because we can do stuff over the airwaves, but trying to say, pay things, send money to her to pay for a translation, not so easy. We can't send money into Russia. My little Yeah, I know. It's all these things you don't think about when you don't realize, and it's a good barrier. We need to have that barrier with Russia. But then trying to get to an individual person is sometimes a little more challenging.
Wow.
My groups that are in around Kiev, both of them have been working with and supporting people in trauma, people in grief, people that Centers for Spiritual Living sent them some money after that big dam break that happened last spring that we never did figure out, did somebody blow up the dam? We think it was Russia, but nothing's ever come out that what really happened there. But the prices of food skyrocketed after that. So Centers for Spiritual Living sent them some money that had been collected, and the teaching chapters have been buying food for the wounded soldiers in the hospitals, because they're saying what they get as, daily rations are just not that great. So they buy them fruit and vegetables and things that maybe they're just not getting in their normal diet. One of the teaching centers also supports an orphanage. So some of the money we've sent to them over, say last Christmas, they went out, they didn't spend it on themselves. They bought gifts for the kids in the orphanage, and they wrapped the gifts and just had a party for them. And it was just lovely. So that's one thing that I do. And I'm obviously very excited about all of that. I'm so glad to be supporting them. Also from Mile High, I support some of the small group programs. So we started small group programs. We actually had them years ago, but we kind of reinvigorated them in 2013. And we've had groups that have been meeting ever since 2013. And they're pretty much the groups that I interact with. We've had smaller group sessions where groups have met for maybe 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 5 weeks. And sometimes I get into supporting them. Some of them become long-term groups, but that's what I do. One of the things I do for Mile High. The other thing I do for Mile High is we have various peace events, and I support and usually am the creator of the peace events. So for instance, on September 21st is always the United Nations Day of Peace. We always have a peace program at Mile High. December 31st is the John Randolph Price Peace Program, the World Healing Peace Day. I support that for Mile High. I create it. And then Dr. Michelle Madrano is my co-host on that. 5 a.m. in the morning, folks, little eyeballs.
Yes.
But we do it because that's when the whole world is praying at that 5 a.m. mountain. But it's, obviously different time in different time zones. Support World Labyrinth Day, and that we always do a peace event for. So there's various peace events throughout the years, and Sacred Saturdays that I always support a peace program on the Sacred Saturdays that I do for Mile High. So that's what I do for Mile High. Now in the volunteer world.
Well, hold on. Let's explore a little of that stuff first, because
sure. Okay. Sure.
I really love the part about being involved with the Ukrainian teaching chapters. And here, New Thought Media Network, we were part of the most recent conference in Geneva, Switzerland, just over a year ago now, where many of those practitioners were present. And some of their I believe they were students just about to take panels later that summer that were just graduating and just coming into the practitioner fold. And I think it's, I want to applaud you for being a part of all this, because what more important place is there for a new thought philosophy, for the power of spiritual mind treatment, than in the midst of what we're seeing of, I'm going to call it, the Russian occupation of the Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's a really, really important work that you're doing there. And I would love if you have any examples or ways you can share with us. I heard you say that one group's working with an orphanage and things like that. What demonstrations have you seen or have been reported to you coming out of the work that these people are doing in the Ukraine, especially as it relates to? I'm sure they're with you on the peace process, even
Yes.
if that's not what's right in front of their mind at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you one thing that they do, which a lot of people are not aware of. They gather twice a day, Monday through Friday, to pray for peace. One of the times that they gather is like 4 a.m. our time, but the other one is at noon. And I am sometimes the host of that noon prayer meditation. It's a 10, 15-minute thing, but they are so conscious of praying for peace. Some of the things that I've seen come out of what they've done is, well, I had a good example and it just went away. But things like supporting people. I know there was one family who was the practitioner in the family was quite worried about her relatives who were in a bombing zone, and the people lost their house. And she came back to one of our conference calls and says, I don't know how to talk to them about, how can I talk New Thought principles to them when they're in such grief over losing their house. Now, nobody lost their life in that particular bombing, but it was still, that this is the kind of life that they're immersed in, is they don't know from 1 minute to the next whether they're going to be bombed or soldiers are going to march through town or whatever. Anyway, the demonstration was after our conversation, she was able to go back to those people and just talk to them about grief and loss and the spiritual side of things, and knowing that, yes, they had lost their history and all their goods, their worldly goods, but at least they still had each other. And it's not something that you run right into somebody in grief and say, oh, but it could have been so much worse. You don't do that. You just start with some basic principles of, let's feel your grief, be with you in the grief, and let's talk about your future,
Right.
Yeah. So one example that.
Yeah, and no, go ahead, Reverend Chris.
No, that's okay, Elsie. I mean, if we could do more there, we just can't imagine what they're going through. I can, from the times that I have conference calls with them and they have no power. And so those that have charged up their phones might be on the conference call. Those that have not charged up their phones are not on the conference call. Or even if they've charged up their phones, maybe they're not displaying a picture because it eats too much battery. They usually have only about 4 or 5 hours a day of power. So during that time, they try to do everything that they need power for. So it's charge their phones, do the laundry, cook a meal, whatever, because then the power is going to go out in a few hours and they know they're going to be in darkness and they're not going to have power to generate heat or anything either. So it's quite yeah. We just don't, we can't comprehend a war zone because it's been so long since the United States has been in a war like that. And it was never on our shores per se. It was at Pearl Harbor, but it was never where they were bombing New York City. Although 9/11 is a different story. But anyway, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's such a touching rendition of the work that's being done there. And the thing that strikes me even more is the courage to do it. And I think, as we continue to move forward with this idea called New Thought, a lot more of us are going to have to take some courageous steps following their lead. Because I can, as you was describing that, to sit here and think about, okay, if we got energy for 5 hours, which 5 hours am I going to get? 7 to 12 or 9 to 2 or which hours? And to think that you can sit there and hold a hold the vision, hold an idea of this new thought in such traumatic situations is remarkable to me, and I applaud you and them for that work for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been very impressed by them. Both of the chapters are very active. Both of them are teaching classes. And the thing I find about the classes they're most interested in right now is things around economics and finances, because there's not a lot of money circulating. A lot of the jobs have been eliminated because they only have, limited power, or they don't have the goods to have the shop open or whatever. So, I find that we talk a lot about spiritual economics from Eric Butterworth, financial freedom, which is a really old style new thought course that's been around forever. Those are the kinds of things that they're getting out there and teaching people.
Nice.
Beautiful. Yeah. 40-day abundance book. There we go. That too. Okay. So tell us, so here's what I love about all that is the group's focus is not on war, but on peace, which is what we teach, which is absolutely fabulous. And I know that a lot of the work you do is really based around that peace process as well, both for Mile High, as you were mentioning, in some of the events they do. But you're also really instrumental at the Centers for Spiritual Living with their Heart of Peace initiative and those events. And I think we'd love to hear a little bit more about that as well. So share with us, if you will, a little bit more about that work you're doing at the Heart of Peace initiative.
Okay. Yes, you can tell. I really got into peace here. It seems to be calling, and that's great. It's a great calling. It's a great calling.
Yes.
So the Heart of Peace Initiative is a group that was actually formulated. Well, the idea was in Spirit's mind. I can't tell you how many years ago, 10, 12, 14 years ago. But slowly over time, it kind of grew up under first Reverend Nancy Anderson, who is no longer with us. And then when she let go of the reins, then it became Reverend Bethlyn Gurry, who Reverend Bethlyn Gurry is part-time in Geneva and part-time in the States. And she started interacting with the Ukraine teaching chapters and sponsored the Geneva Convention and all that kind of good stuff. When Reverend Beth stepped out of being the sponsor for the teaching chapters, that's when I stepped in. But in the meantime, I had stepped into the Heart of Peace Initiative when Beth left, which was a few years before the Geneva Convention. So about 2018, 2019. What we do, we've been running every Monday at 1 p.m. Mountain. We've been running a peace meditation on the CSL Facebook page. That is a global meditation in that many of the speakers are from the States or speak English, but we also have people from Kenya, Nairobi, Christchurch, England, Germany. Yesterday we had 3 speakers on from Mexico City. So when we have, for instance, the Mexico City folks, it was a complete Spanish meditation. Yeah. So I always put in the chat, I kind of moderate the chat for those. And I always put, listen to the feeling tone. If you don't understand Spanish, doesn't matter. PAZ is peace. They'll say it many times. Just listen to the feeling tone. The same when we've done some stuff out of Nairobi. We've done it both in Swahili and in English. Next week, we have 2 practitioners that were with CSL Geneva that are going to do theirs in French and in English. So sometimes we get partners who can do both, and they kind of play off each other, which is just fantastic, because then people can get the English part if they don't understand the French part. So that's one thing we do, is the Monday meditations. And I guess I will say to the viewers today, We're going to go on a hiatus starting in January. We are reformulating and looking at whether we want to do YouTube segments or some other modality of getting those weekly meditations out. So for a while, there may not be any while we create those gears to get something else running. But the other thing we do is we do a variety of events throughout the year. So for instance, World Labyrinth Day, which is always the first Saturday of May. We also do a peace event on that day. And that one, for instance, we've been displaying it on the CSL Facebook page so that people can come in at any time during the day. There isn't a specific time that you have to walk. We do say with World Labyrinth Day, we say walk as one at one in your time zone. But if that doesn't work for you, come in anytime and experience the meditation. We also do the September 21st UN International Day of Peace. We do the December 31st event. And then we're going to be providing a peace meditation video to the CSL convention this year that's going to be held in February. Last year, we provided actually bookmarks to both the SOAR convention in the summer and the Parliament of World Religions. And the bookmark, I don't have one right here, but had a QR code and a website on it. And if you went to either the QR code or the website, there were 14 peace meditations available by different people. 2 of them were by Ernest Holmes. And then the other 12 were by different ministers, practitioners, or whatever. We plan to continue to build that because we find, anybody can go there anytime that they need a little peace. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And as we scan the globe, we know peace is in high demand right now. So I will definitely make it my personal business to go check it out.
Yeah, please do. Please do. Yeah. Yeah, it's a little fun thing, and we're going to be adding meditations to it as we go along. So
I remember you mentioned the Parliament of World Religions and connecting with you there this past year. And that's, again, to me, one of those demonstrations where you see that not only is peace possible, but it's actually happening. And we just have to open our eyes to look and see the various places where the concept, the ideal, the everything that we consider to be peace is actually happening. And it's more prevalent across the planet. The places where it's not so much get a lot more of the news cycle and a lot more of the attention. But we can be in that intentional space of saying, how do I bring more peace to whatever it is that I'm doing in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, the Parliament of World Religions was really a great example of people from all over the world coming together and presenting their meditations, their cultural traditions of faith, of prayer. We had people there from China. We had people. We did not have anybody there from Russia that I'm aware of, but we had people from all over who just wanted to share their faith tradition and how they pray. And yes, we hear the news is so oriented towards drama that instead of what's the good stuff going on in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I've been doing it myself for the last few days, and that is limiting myself on the amount of news I take in, especially on a visual television perspective. One, because no matter whether I do it in the morning or in the afternoon, it always sets a tone, as you were saying earlier, want a tone for peace. But I've seen that really it's just a rerun, right? I mean, it's the same story will get on and go for 5-6 days sometime. The same narrative, they show different pictures, but nothing's changed. There's no new information that highlights what's going on. And I think when we think about our tradition of thoughts or things, and I'm allowing that same thought not only to be repeated several days, but it is the same thought that's being created several days. And we know that this force of habit, if we keep doing that, it plants a seed, and at that point it takes its own root to germination. So I think that's an idea that has been refreshed in my mind. And thanks for reminding of really being clear about the thoughts that we hold, because we know thoughts are things.
Yeah. Before the Russia occupation of Ukraine, and before the Hamas-Israeli war, I used to watch world news because it was just interesting to find out, what was going on in the world. Now that there's so much about the wars, and even on our regular U.S. TV stations, usually they kick off with something about a war. And it's like, no. Let's think about the people that are doing good, the people that are upholding prayer, are saving lives, are right there working with the injured or whatever. They're the people to be admired and to be publicized, not the people that are going crazy on all this other stuff that's not going to get us anywhere.
Exactly.
Violence never got us anywhere.
Except more violence. And speaking of that, I have to do this because my brain's been just screaming at me. Right? We all get our news from the place we think is giving us the most accurate news, and then we just generally repeat whatever it is that we think has given us the truth.
Yes.
And John Oliver with This Week Tonight or This Week, whatever his show is on HBO. And you can get the main piece of the story on YouTube. I watch him every Monday morning on YouTube. And he did an amazing job of an in-depth 30-minute piece on the Hamas-Israel experience. And not just the sensationalism of war and bombed out buildings. And it struck me, the story seems similar. The Ukraine gets their 3 to 5 hours of electricity a day, and Gaza's getting 3 to 5 hours of electricity today, and a shortage of clean water, and hard to maintain shelter and food and all those things. And I think he did an amazing job at looking at the deeper implications, the long-term experience of what got us today, and from his perspective, why finding peace in that region seems to be so difficult. So I'm going to give a shout out to, and we get this, and so the best news comes from our comedy shows anymore. Right.
Yes.
A comedian gives us the real deal, and in 30 minutes is able to break it down in a way that is, I believe, relatively unbiased and balanced, and sharing a perspective of what it's like to not only live through these types of conflicts, but also maintain that hope, and I'm going to say that prayer for peace as well.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah. Very important.
You just struck a new idea in my head. I don't know. It's to get a new thought comedy news hour, so to speak. That speaks to the issues with a little levity, right? But it's straightforward and provides some context as well as content, because that's what I found about these comedic news reporters, if you will. And sometimes they say things that, is kind of edgy, but it gets the point across that we have to think about being peaceful, and we have to think about how we act, and we have to think about the ideas we hold in mind, so that we don't become dare I say, robots of the system, for lack of a better way of saying that, and not have what our founder, Ernest Holmes, is so famous for saying, have a new thought. Have a new thought about this stuff. Not the old thought that they keep repeating over and over again, but have a new one. And sometimes oftentimes comedy is a good way to do that, because it doesn't pull any punches and it comes pretty straight.
Let's it happen. Exactly. Well, hey, folks, if you wonder what you've wandered in here to today, this is New Thought Today on the New Thought Media Network. My co-host, Reverend LZ, and I have great conversations every Tuesday with amazing folks. And today that's Reverend Chris Plym, Special Focus Ministry at the Mile High Church here in Lakewood, Colorado. We do need to take a quick break and let some of our sponsors say hello. However, we've got a lot more to chat about, and we still got a whole ton of stuff on our list of things to chat about. So we're going to be back real soon. Stay with us. Stay tuned. Let your friends and family know what we're doing. We'll be right back after the break. Stay with us.
You are a gift. That is the absolute truth. You are a gift, a blessing to the world, a way that the infinite love of God shines itself, shares itself, and expresses itself more fully in the world. You are a gift and a blessing. Please take that seriously. Take it as your honor. Take it as your opportunity to be a light that shines for others. Be that bright light of God's love that's the truth of who you are, and enjoy it, because you deserve it.
And we're back with more of New Thought Today here on the New Thought Media Network. Our guest today, Reverend Chris Plym, Special Focus Ministry with Mile High Church in Lakewood, Colorado, as well as very active in various peace initiatives within the Centers for Spiritual Living. Chris has so far, everything we've shared has been really inspiring, and we're not done, because if you weren't busy enough, you also hang out and work with one of our dear partners in inspiration, the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. And we love hanging out, working with the archives. We try to partner in various ways throughout the year, as well as rely on the archives resources for our Science of Mind Saturday conversation series in the second half of every year. That was a sentence and a half. Tell us a little more about your work and your involvement with the archives.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Another volunteer opportunity. They're all laughing because, I know Z and I know Brez, and they both have volunteered and go over and beyond what normal calling would be. But okay, the Science of Mind Archives. The Science of Mind Archives is a separate 401(c) from Centers for Spiritual Living. Many people do not know that. They think that it's a department of Centers for Spiritual Living. It is not. It was founded years ago, mainly by Marilyn Leo and her husband, Richard, who Richard has since passed on. But Marilyn has continued to move forward. And there are people like, I'm just going to be a name dropper, Bill Lynn, who knew Ernest Holmes, is what Marilyn knew Ernest Holmes. Bill Lynn was the, if you will, executive person at the first Church of Religious Science way back when, and continued working with Ernest for 30 some years. Bill is still on this plane, although he doesn't come out very much because he's like, I'm retired. I'm in my 90s. Okay. But anyway, so the archives is, it's just a great place if you've never heard of it. We do a variety of things, but right now, for instance, there are over 12,000 books in the library because we collect not just Ernest Holmes books, but New Thought books. So various New Thought authors, various ministers, practitioners, whatever, anything that's related to New Thought is in that library. We also have all the minutes from the original creation of the religious science movement. We have minutes of the meetings going forward. We have digitized lots of things, like digitally you can find all of the old Creative Thought and Science Mind magazines from the beginning of time, whenever they started, which was like 1929, something like that. We have lots of audio files that have been digitized, video files. We're starting to digitize some of those. We don't have as many of those as of Dr. Ernest as we would like, but the ones that we can find, we get them digitized. We put them available on the website. If you go to somarchives.org, you get to the website, which has free materials on it, as well as you can buy subscriptions, website subscriptions. You can buy low-cost materials that are like $1.29 for a booklet written by Holmes or Hornaday or, whatever. Lots of materials out there. I am on the board of the archives. So I am secretary to the board, which is somewhat a boring job, but not totally, because I'm in all the meetings and I get to have a say-so. But I am also the chair of the relocation committee. Some of you may know that Centers for Spiritual Living is in the process of selling the main building in Golden. They are working with a company who they believe will probably purchase the building early, mid next year. There's lots of different facets to all that. So it's a big purchase. It's not just sit down and go buy a house somewhere. Because of that, the Science of Mind archives will be moving, and we've been actively looking at new locations for the Science of Mind archives. We do not have a decision on that yet, but perhaps later in this conversation, I might share with you some of the things we're thinking about, because if we're moving, we might as well think about moving with other New Thought entities. I'll just throw that out, kind of a teaser. Yeah.
So we're going to knock on the door at Unity Village, is what you're saying, and say, hey.
Yes, that's a door we've been sort of knocking on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they by far have the best facility right now for not only our archives, but if other, like Divine Science or INTA or some of the other New Thought groups ever think about moving their archives, that would be a natural lead-in for one great big New Thought library. So that is certainly being considered. No decisions are being made yet, right. But it's definitely a consideration.
And hopefully that would give everyone the impetus to move into the idea of one New Thought organization that everyone buys into, and to have that, and to have a place where all of the materials are available for research, for sale, or for whatever needs to take place to disseminate this information in its different facets, kind of like a kaleidoscope. You take the kaleidoscope, it only has a certain number of colors or whatever is in there, but when you turn it, it creates these ever-changing facets of the one thing, if you will, which is what I think we have, and that's what we need to begin to lean on and understand that, as I turn the kaleidoscope of life, it takes on various shapes and colors, but it's all being produced by one thing, and when you reminded me about the magazine being created in 29, right in the beginning of the Depression, just think about the new thought there, that someone had a new thought about how you could live in a period of time where everything was, dare I say, a little bit desolate, and a little bit challenged. So I think that's a great idea. I will definitely send some prayers and positive energies toward that collection for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Elzia, you make a great point. During the Depression, it was interesting. A lot of things did not survive, but the Science of Mind magazine not only survived, it thrived. And of course, it took years to build up, a substantial base. But just that it was there and it got passed around to people, it was not like somebody just bought the subscription for themselves or whatever, but they would pass it on to all their friends, try to provide inspiration for a time in our economy that everything was really bleak. Let's put it that way, bleak. Yeah.
Having visited the Unity archives, which are at Unity Village, and having visited those a few times now, and having visited the Science of Mind archives many times, I see that vision of how amazing it is not to shove everything into one, right?
No.
But to be able to know that, well, I can just walk across the campus or walk down the hall or walk up a few flights and be able to cross-reference materials that, and to come into, I think as Elzia is saying, a lot more of that collaborative relationship rather than this is ours over here and this is yours over there, and there are some ideas of what's happening with the Divine Science archives, and even as you mentioned, INTA, I know the Addington archives at the International New Thought Alliance, they've been archiving all of their work over the last 100+ years and more, and it's really cool that Thomas Troward was actually the president of the International New Thought Alliance for a while, and how cool would it be to have all of these different resources literally under one roof?
Yeah.
For the future, for research, for cross-pollination, for cross-referencing, for all of it.
Yeah.
I think we sparked.
And I just
too,
yeah. Oh yeah. See, I just got a new thought. You saw me sit up, kind of straighten my chair there. Because wouldn't it be great looking forward, right? If we could get let's say there's 5 organizations, which there's just about 5 or 6 that we get a 5-story building. Each floor is the storehouse of each of the organization's historical perspective. So you can literally walk up or down, and that we do like the Smithsonian Institute, where on occasions we take select items that represent the fullness of this movement and take it around on exhibits to other places. I mean, if we're going to think new and outside the box, let's do it. Let's not play around with it. And I think that would be such, get a good speaker at different centers or whatever to talk about this idea, to show the collaboration and show what happens when you collaborate on great ideas that are centered on the fullness of God and the fullness of humanity.
Yeah. Elzia, I love where you went with that. And I do want to tell you that part of the archives vision is we got to get over this relocation first, we think, but to put together a traveling roadshow and, depending on how things work out, whether it's, inviting Unity, Divine Science, whatever, to be part of that, but almost like a roadshow in a box where it can be sent to various centers, communities, groups that might want some video streaming, that might want to hear the words, hear Fillmore, hear Holmes, hear Addington, experience them, see them walk across the lawn at a Silmar, all that kind of good stuff. It's very exciting, you know.
Yes, and dare I say that each one of the floors has a representative, could be rotating 2-year term or whatever, that becomes some kind of
TNT put together one of the workshops for the Parliament, and it drew on people from Divine Science, Unity, various facets, and they did a program where they talked about the women of New Thought, but to talk about the women of New Thought, you've also got to talk about Ernest Holmes was the teacher of, so-and-so, or, Emma Curtis Hopkins taught Fillmore and Holmes, and, Troward taught, so their workshop was an encapsulation of what you're talking about, Elzia. And I think that could be a very powerful way to bring New Thought further into the world, is with all of us, because we all have the same theology. Our theology is oneness, period. I mean, that's the short and simple theology is oneness. So we know we're one with them. They might have had a different slant on it. Somebody might have taught this a little differently, but it's the same message. It's the same message. Thoughts create the world that we perceive and experience.
Amen. I'm really reminded of a dear friend to this program and to the network, Reverend Dr. Tim Stewart, who is currently the president of INTA, of International New Thought Alliance. And I've heard him say in speeches and privately that, we all come into New Thought through a different channel. We all come in through a different focus, if you will, whether it's unity, divine science, religious science, independent thought that leads us to New Thought. We all come in thinking we're special and nobody's quite like we are.
Yeah.
And then at some point, whether we are called, pushed, or pulled, we step outside of the tradition that we are initiated by, and recognize that we really are all speaking the same. We're all teaching exactly the same thing.
Yes.
And oftentimes we don't realize that our brothers and sisters and cousins are teaching exactly. And while we didn't actually ask the question that way of you, Reverend, and all kinds of other things that are being,
I want a bigger view of the world. We are less than 150 years old. And you look at so many other religions that have been around for years and years and years. And I'm not saying anything bad about them, because certainly you can have whatever religious tradition works for you. We are a philosophy and a tradition, but you can be Jewish or Catholic or Presbyterian, whatever you want. Doesn't matter. Hindu, doesn't matter. We have Hindus in our church. But we have built so much in just that 150 years, because we are, as Ernest would say, open at the top. We are willing to look at new ideas. We are willing to expand. We're willing to try to see a bigger perspective. And that is just, so many places are just not in that at all. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's maybe because they've been around for 2,000 years, they have kind of become entrenched. They've developed rituals and programs and whatever, that this is the way things are done. And then people look for more. And it's like, And I'm sorry if you hear my dog barking. He just does that sometimes.
But the point that you make in my mind is that there's the old traditions that are still serving people, but they're still limited, right? Because if we look at some of the conflicts in the world right now, some of those conflicts are being kickstarted and ongoing because of a traditional idea that was made some 1,000 years ago, when we don't have the information or the insight or the technology to shed more light or to widen the spectrum of that light. And because it's sometimes thought that if we break from tradition, that we're destroying the world, so to speak. When in fact, what we're trying to do with New Thought is give a new perspective of the world that gives us a broader lens. And I think that's where we have to go, because a lot of young and old people are moving away, especially the young people, are from these old traditions, because they see there's a little contradiction going on between what's being taught and what's being done. And I think New Thought provides an opportunity to reconcile those opposites and find a new path forward.
Yes. Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we do need to take another quick break and say thank you to our organizational donors and individual sponsors, as well as give each of our guests here a chance to take a breather. But we are not done yet. We're going to be back with our final thoughts right after this. Please stay with us. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Yes. Thank you to all of our organizational sponsors and individual donors. It's people like you that help us get this message and share this mighty philosophy out into the world, and allows us to have these amazing conversations like we've had today with Reverend Chris Plym here on the New Thought Media Network. Reverend Chris, we are so grateful that you have been with us today. And, there's always one question we like to ask before we go, and is that, will you come back again sometime?
Yes. Yes. In between the little juggling act that I do.
With everything. I know you're a very, very busy woman. So, and you're doing the good work of bringing New Thought forward. So thank you for that. All right, before we go, we always have time for our final thoughts. Rev Z, let's kick it to you.
Wow, man, there's so much that's been moving for me here in this conversation with Reverend Chris, I tell you. But I think if I had to leave one thought, is let's visualize a reunion, a true reunion, and a council of New Thought, not the different associations, but a council of all of that in the material, so that when we are ready to step into a broader vision and a broader way of working, that as Reverend Chris spoke to the theology of oneness, that we are ready, willing, and able to do for with so much ease and grace that it's just a true blessing. And I think that idea.
Beautiful. Thank you. Reverend Chris.
I've loved talking to both of you. I find any time that I talk to either of you, usually individually, not together, but you always have such great ideas. And I really, as much as I hope that your readers got a little inspiration out of today, I'm inspired to just continue to carry this work forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank
and
you.
Peace.
Yes. And that is the word for me today. And that is the deeper final thought for me is I'm reminded of the phrase that there is no way to peace, that peace is the way. And when I look at the work you're doing, Reverend Chris, whether it's in small groups, whether it's in keeping people interested in this philosophy in the Ukraine, your volunteer work with the archives, and all the places you show up, the Heart of Peace Initiative. I see you as an example of being peace. Not trying to lead people to peace, but by being peace in the world and allowing that inspiration to ripple out. So it's really grateful that you're here with us today. I'm glad to hear that you'll come back again another time and join us again. And what I know is, I know that folks, stay in touch with what Reverend Chris is doing and pay attention, because you really are being peace in the world, and we need all of that we can get. So thanks again for being with us today.
All right.
Folks, that's all we've got time for. We're going to get out of here. We're going to wish you peace and richest blessings. And until next time, hope you have a great day. Stay tuned on New Thought Media Network. We've got all kinds of great programming all throughout the week. Until next time, we do wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.
Bye.